Hey all you sequel addicts out there, this is James Curtis, aka Porkchop Express, host and head writer for iHeartSequelsBlogspot.com. Coming to you today, it's Friday the 13th, and in honor of that very special date, I thought I'd talk about one of my favorite sequels of all time. This wouldn't really fall under the category of even better than the real thing. I've never done one of those videos yet, and this was written articles that I've done for my blog before. Even better than the real thing, I'll do one of those eventually, video-wise, but the articles are basically about sequels that I think are better than the first film, which a lot of people say there aren't many, but I think there's quite a few. In fact, I think the first one I ever wrote up was for Sergio Leone's For a Few Dollars More, which is my favorite of the Dollars trilogy. It's something we'll cover later on in a video down the line, I'm sure. I also wrote about Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey, which I think is much better than Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure. But, you know, that's not what this is. This is me talking about one of my favorite sequels. And in honor of Friday the 13th, I thought I would talk about my favorite Jason movie. Which is Friday the 13th, the final chapter, aka Friday the 13th Part 4. It wasn't called Part 4, if anybody remembers that. It's still on there. It doesn't even say Part 4, but people like to say Part 4 for shorthand. It's Friday the 13th, the final chapter, the one where they basically tried to kill Jason, successfully, at least for a short period of time. I think that this was the first ever full Friday the 13th film I sat through. I'm sure I had seen bits and pieces before. I had been raised by a lot of different people, and so there were always fleeting glimpses of horror movies and things like that. I can remember walking in on my mom and my stepdad, one of my stepdads, watching Nightmare on Elm Street Part 1. I hadn't seen it yet. It would just come out on video. And I can remember walking in and seeing the scene where Tina's being dragged around the room. Anyway, same thing with Friday the 13th. I'm sure I saw bits and pieces of 1, 2, or 3. But I saw the final chapter first, which maybe that was the profoundest. Maybe that's why it had such a profound impact on me. It made me a Jason fan for sure. But I think even objectively speaking, it's a much better film, better made film than 2 and 3. I don't know if you can call it a better made film than Part 1. Pretty close. Part 4, final chapter, was directed by a guy who I think is an exploitation master. A guy by the name of Joseph Zito. He made 2 incredible slasher films, Friday the 13th Final Chapter, and before that, The Prowler, the film where he met Tom Savini. A really amazingly effective little film. And then he had also worked for Cannon and made 2 Chuck Norris actioners. He made the first Missing in Action, and then he made my favorite Chuck Norris movie. He made the wildly over-the-top Invasion USA. And so I think with Zito you get a director who gets a concept, does it right the first time, does it better the second time. He makes The Prowler. It's really fun, but it's not as good. Like final chapter Friday the 13th is just a tight little movie. And the same thing with his 2 Chuck Norris films. Missing in Action is a good, effective film, but he's having a blast with all the toys that he gets to play with when he was making Invasion USA, not the least of which is the late, great Richard Lynch as the incredibly goofy, wild, sinister villain in that film. But anyway, back to the Friday the 13th final chapter. Zito's work is incredibly effective, especially coming after the rather flat direction in 2 and in Friday the 13th Part 3D. 3D is one of those films that I enjoy as a goof, but it's one of my least favorite films in the series. I know a lot of people would disagree with me. I think a lot of that, though, has to do with our final girl, and not just the performance that she gives, but the character as written on the page as well, and also her story arc. This whole thing with who knows what happened with her and Jason when she was, you know, a couple years younger, essentially. I don't know. It doesn't feel right, considering. But Part 4 doesn't really suffer from that. Part 4 starts with the montage where we get a little bit of backstory about Jason and his mom, and you know, we see clips from 1, 2, and 3, and we kind of know what's going on. And then we slam right into what basically was the end of Friday the 13th 3, where Jason's been killed, slapped in the head with the axe, and he's found in the barn basically, and they take him to the morgue down in Crystal Lake, and we're off from there. And it's one of those films where every kill is incredibly effective, either because of the gore or the intensity. There's stuff in here that it's very mean-spirited. The little chubby hippie girl that gets killed while she's eating a banana by Jason. It seems really arbitrary and kind of ridiculous, and it's really sinister sounding, and it's pretty gory. It's one of the only kills in the movie that feels just kind of tacked on. But that one's really amazing. The shower scene where it's like the reverse of the usual. Instead of the girl in the shower, you got the himbo in the shower, the pretty boy, and Jason crushing that dude's head into the tile. One of my favorite kills is one of the ones that it seems like a throwaway, but it's so intense. The way Zito edits it, the sound design, is the scene where the character's names escape me right now because I'm just totally fucking tired. But anyway, the girl, the virginal character who had just slept with the himbo, she discovers the himbo's body. She's running around. She sees Jason. She's running through the house, and she gets to the door, and she's trying to get through the door, and slam, whack, right through the door. That axe comes smashing through, and lands right in her chest. It's really vivid. It's incredibly fast paced. It speaks to the power of Jason, the way the character is able to basically throw an axe through a door. It's got the best kills in the series, I think, without going into the goofier stuff that happens after he's brought back from the dead, in Part 6. The less we talk about Part 5, the better. The cast is really good. First of all, let's talk about Corey Feldman. Corey Feldman, at the time, was a good kid actor. He was just one of those familiar faces that every time he worked in a movie, whether it was, Gremlins or... he worked on the Bad News Bears television series. He was one of those faces that he wasn't annoying yet, essentially, and he was a good kid actor. He seemed very natural. He had a real character that you could kind of identify as sort of like a real kid. And there's also that thing where he's basically the little Tom Savini. He makes monster shit, and he's one of us. He's a monster fan. So that's cool. His mother, his sister, everybody in the cast is fantastic. The teenagers that are thrown in there, the cannon fodder characters, all the performers are really good, especially Judy Aronson, who would later go on to do Weird Science, and of course Crispin Glover, who would go on to do Back to the Future. And I can't remember his name right now, but he's the dead fuck character who worked on in Cannon's Last American Virgin. He's really great in that movie. If you've never seen Last American Virgin, you need to go out and get that damn movie. That is one of the greatest 80s, if you look at 80s comedies, teen comedies, it's like Fast Times at Ridgemont High, Valley Girl, Last American Virgin. It seems like this stupid waste of a fucking Porky's movie when you first start to look at it, but it gets really smart and really heartbreaking, and he's really great in it. I'm an idiot who can't remember his name right now, but whatever. Go check it out. Last American Virgin. Worth checking out. It's Friday the 13th, the final chapter. Looks great. It's edited great. Music works effectively. It's a great cast. There's so many different things you could talk about. Friday the 13th Part 4, but one of the main things you really need to talk about is the return of Tom Savini. Tom Savini's effects in this film are fantastic, especially the death of Jason. I'm sure you people watching this have seen it. If you haven't, it's not an incredible spoiler because you know that Jason's not going to fucking die forever. He's got, in this timeline, 7 more movies, if you count Freddy vs. Jason X, all that stuff. Outside of Platinum Dunes, Jason was in 10 movies. 11 if you count Friday the 13th Part 1. So he's not going to die. But the way he's killed, Corey Feldman dresses up like the young Jason, distracts Jason away from his sister, whacks him upside the head with a machete, and then Jason goes falling down, lands on the floor, the blade sliding through his head. Oh my god, that puppet head, the animatronic head that they use for that, fucking genius, man. Tom Savini's work is so great in this. All the other kills are really good. There's the scene with the the hacksaw being used on the mortician. I love that character because that dude's just hilarious. I think it's actually quite realistic. I mean, it's goofy realistic, but I love the banality of a guy who works in a morgue, is so used to seeing all these stiffs, can't wait to get his fuck on like anybody else. It's just kind of funny to me. And his death with the hacksaw is I think it's the first death. Yeah, it's the first death in the film. It's wildly over the top, and it really sets the tone for this film. Just like the first three films, especially the first film, with the way it's edited, paced, sound design, the makeup, it's scary, but it's gory. It's the best of both worlds. Savini's effects in this film are as good, if not better, than the first Friday the 13th. I mean, you look at the first Friday the 13th when he whacks off Jason's mother's head with the machete. You know, it's a good effect, but it's not as effective and not as wildly designed as Jason getting the machete in his head, sliding down it. I mean, it's a vast improvement. But Zito is a really good director of suspense as well. So those moments, there are some really scary moments. There are some really great shocks that don't just rely on gore the way some of those other ones, the other later films do. I'm thinking of the twins, the Doublemint twins, basically. The one girl, when she can't, you know, when she's basically not going to get hers, she goes and she leaves. She walks outside in the rain, she's got her slicker on, she goes to grab her bike, and the camera pulls away from her, and you see the lightning flash, and instead of actually seeing her being killed and gored by Jason vividly, you actually see the silhouette of the spear going into her with the lightning flash and all that stuff. It still maintains a kind of Hitchcockian design where you're not seeing everything. You never see what happens to the mother. I think that's an editing decision. I'm not entirely sure. There's also that really amazing scene where I still don't know what it is. A lot of people think that it's Jason throwing the family's dog out the window, which seems kind of shitty. I actually like to think that it's the other thing, where Jason, the family's dog, sees Jason and is so frightened he jumps out the second-story window. He's just like, "Fuck this," and just bails out. You know, there's moments like that sort of add to the texture, make it more of a scary movie and not just a slasher film. I would probably say it's my favorite of just the exploitative slasher films. I mean, my favorite slasher movie is probably Black Christmas. I love Halloween, but Black Christmas just takes the cake. But for that era of 80s slasherdom, where you've got like My Bloody Valentine, Happy Birthday to Me, you know, you've got Visiting Hours, you've got New Year's Evil, you've got all these movies, right? And most of them are pretty kind of crap. Some of them have some really amazing stuff going on. Some of them have a lot of bullshit going on. But I think that Friday the 13th Part 4 is just a perfect slasher film. It's a great sequel. And it's a sequel that, while it sort of ties into the continuity of the other films, you don't really need to know a lot about Jason to get into these movies. But it's this perfect end point, getting from Part 1 to Part 4. The first 4 Friday the 13th films, as flat as I think 2 and 3, especially 3 are, because 3 they're just too busy jerking off with the 3D. And then there's all these script problems, and then the final girl is obnoxious. But, you know, those first 4 Friday the 13th films are amazing. They're just perfect the way they flow from one to the next. The feel, the world design that they come up with. It's really great, and it does culminate in that 4th film. It's not a, you know, you don't have to have a seriety. It's not it's not predicated on continuity. You don't have to have a serious sense of where the series is going to just come into Part 4 and enjoy the film as a great monster movie. It's a great monster movie. I think when I talked about the Friday the 13th remake, the Platinum Dunes remake in Unsequelized previously, I said that Jason is our American Godzilla, and it's very true. You can just come into any of these movies knowing basically who Jason is. Jason is, for all intents and purposes, a stereotype. He's a trope. He's a guy in the woods with a machete and a hockey mask. You don't really need to know much about him. It's more about who's making the movie that makes it most effective. It's the same thing with the Godzilla films. We know what Godzilla is. James Bond is another great example of that. All of my favorite film series really come down to my favorite entries in my favorite film series really come down to who's making the film, what the script is like, the actors. It's really about filmmaking. You know what I mean? It's one of those things where you don't really need to have the most original world. What you need are people who know how to make a film work with all the right elements. And that's the thing about Friday the 13th Part 4 for the final chapter, is that everything works. The cast is great, sound design is great, cinematography is great, the editing is great. This is a really great Jason. The director knows how to pace a film. He knows where the laughs need to be. He knew how to hire the right actors or work with the actors to get the right laughs. I don't really know. I wasn't there, but I get the feeling that what makes a difference is the right director, the right people. That's obviously I'm Captain fucking Obvious here, but it's true. It's not always about how original an entry in a film series is. It's about who's making the film, and who's involved and what the intention is. Even if it's just to make a quick buck, as long as you get someone on board who's a talent. I mean, you watch The Prowler. If I was producing the Friday the 13th films, if I was, Mancuso and those guys, and I saw The Prowler, I would have thought, holy shit, this is definitely the guy to bring on board for Friday the 13th. And The Prowler is a really well-made film. Friday the 13th Part 4 is a really well-made film. Most of you people out there who are seeing this probably have already seen these films. So there's really not a whole lot to recommend. I just kind of wanted to go off and talk about how much I love Jason and how much I love this movie. I do want to say that if you haven't seen any of the Joseph Zito films that I mentioned, you should see them. Blue Underground's copy, their print of The Prowler, is I don't think it's out of print right now. I don't think so. You can still get it. But Blue Underground came out with a really great DVD for The Prowler. MGM still has the rights to all the Cannon films, I believe. So, the Missing in Action films are still available on DVD. Those are fine, but you really should check out Invasion USA. Even if you don't like Chuck Norris and you're sick of fucking Chuck Norris and you're sick of Chuck Norris jokes and you think Chuck Norris is a fucking psychotic right-wing asshole who should be relegated to infomercials for the rest of his life, you should see Invasion USA. It's a prime piece of 80s exploitation. It's one of the best things that Cannon put out in their heyday. That wasn't an art film. That wasn't Shy People. So, anyway, to all you Jason fanatics out there, if you're watching this and you think I'm wrong, tell me why I'm wrong. Tell me what your favorite one is. I want to know. I do like the later Jason films. I have a soft spot for the Friday the 13th Part 7. I actually hung out with the director and talked with him a lot at one of the last cons I was at. I love the way he made Jason look, the rotting corpse. I mean, he was a makeup man to begin with. So, it's not a great film, but there's stuff that I really like about it. Part 6 is fun. I mean, Part 6 is just this goofy movie. It's ridiculously fun. I don't like Jason Takes Manhattan. Sue me. I like Jason Goes to Hell. So you can sue me for that. I also got to meet the director of that film in a toy store down on 3rd Street Promenade in Santa Monica, and he, I think, was shocked that anybody actually gave him props. I get the feeling this guy's never been told by anybody that they like Jason Goes to Hell. I like Jason X. It's fun. It knows what it is. It's a lark. Some of these things do just border on becoming a comedy. But my favorite is this 4th film. It's the perfect blend. You can tell me I'm wrong, tell me why I'm wrong, but I'll tell you why I think it's a great film. The comedy's right, the scares are right, the gore is right. Everybody involved is working up to their A game. There isn't a cast member I hate in Part 4. I don't hate any of the editing decisions. I love the look of the film. The story is kind of... it's fun because it opens it up a little bit more. It's not just the teens going out to the woods. They brought in the family. You know, they brought it out into the city a little bit more with Jason going to the morgue and basically working his way back from the morgue to Crystal Lake and winding up down near where the house and the two houses are. I love that design. I love that the two houses are right across from each other and the action keeps swinging back and forth. It's got everything in it, and it's done really well. That's like the only thing you really need to say about Part 4. If you like Jason, Part 4 should be in your top 2 fucking entries. If you don't like Jason, I understand. And if your favorite of the film series is Friday the 13th, the first film, totally get that too. But if there's a Jason film that I'm going to take with me on a desert island, it's going to be Friday the 13th Part 4. So, to all you sequel addicts out there, to all you film addicts out there, to anybody out there who's actually paying attention, I will see you soon. I will be doing another sophomore slump. I already talked about that. I'll be talking about Club Dread. I'm going to be doing one of my first videos for Even Better Than the Real Thing, where I talk about a sequel that I think is better than the original. Although this one's going to be a sequel that's completely different from the original, which probably validates why it's better than the first film. What else is going on? I'm still going to be talking about the Spider-Man films, even though Amazing Spider-Man's already out. I still want to get some people together to talk about Spider-Man. So if you're in the LA area and you want to do one of these roundtable things with me, let me know. Batman comes out in a week. Dark Knight Rises comes out in 1 week. I still want to do a roundtable for all the Batman films before this. I don't know if anybody's going to want to do it with me. Most people are flakes. Or they're just busy. But I promise more where you're not just staring at my mug for 20 minutes. But I also promise you're going to have to look at this if you stick with me. Anyway, so to all you out there, I say see you soon. Enjoy your Friday the 13th. Don't let it get you down. It's actually going to be a great day, and if you need to feel a little bit better, go home and watch a Jason movie. In fact, go home and watch Friday the 13th, the final chapter. You'll thank me for it. And if you don't, let me know why. This is James Curtis, the Pork Chop Express, iHeartSequels, blogspot.com, signing out. See you next time.